Welcome to the Learning Experience powered by CAST. I'm one of your hosts, Kelly Suding.
And I'm Luis Perez.
And I'm Brian Dean.
We are three educators here ready to break down barriers until learning has no limits. Let's do this. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Learning Experience with myself and my friends Louise and Brian. And I don't know about you friends, but I have been so excited for weeks about this conversation.
Oh, for sure.
Me too. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think that I've been so excited. We should just jump right into it. So we have a special guest that we are so excited to introduce you to, Stacia Jackson, who is a senior learning design manager at Lego Education, and she is based in Denmark. How cool is it to work at Lego? Could you imagine that, working at Lego? What a cool job that's got to be.
I would just be worried about all the times that I would step on bricks. Like that would be my constant workplace fear. Because I walk around without shoes a lot. I was going to say,
Brian, the beauty of listening to this podcast is you will not step on any bricks, hopefully, while you're listening to our podcast. But
That's right.
My guess is you probably have some Legos somewhere in your house because they're such a big part of all of our lives, growing up. It's one of the most popular toys in the world, right? So
absolutely.
We probably all have fond memories of building with Legos. So we're so excited to have Stacia here with us.
Yes, and I'm wondering, we're going to find out from her. I feel like there's like this initiation when you have to work at Lego. You have to take your shoes off and walk down a hallway of bricks. So, Stacia, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so glad to have you.
I will say there is no initiation of walking barefoot over bricks at Lego.
Wink, wink, right?
Not
wink,
yet.
wink.
Now you've given everybody, an idea for what induction's going to look like.
Yes. Or the next, if we visit, that's going to be our only entry into the building now.
Completely. We'll redo the walkways for you just with Lego bricks.
Well, this has already been off to a really fun start. So, Stacia, let's start with just learning a little bit about you. We would love for you to talk about your UDL and accessibility story and how it all brought you to the work that you currently do in your role. So we would love to hear.
Absolutely. So I've been with Lego Education for a little over 6.5 years now. And prior to that, I was working with various nonprofits and charities in the U.S. I'm originally from the U.S., but we relocated to Denmark 6.5 years ago. And I've always been in the education field. So I was working with preschools, I was working with university students, I've worked at science museums, and every time we're focusing on helping, traditionally marginalized students or students who don't necessarily have access to things that their peers do. And so then coming to Lego Education, I get the really cool opportunity of playing in that intersection between how teachers teach, how students learn, how to do that with Lego bricks, and how to do that in science class. And so Lego Education is part of the larger Lego group. So like the ones that you can buy off the shelves or you can get off of Amazon. But we're a little bit different. So we sit within the Lego group and we sell and create products for schools. And so we are looking at creating engaging and joyful experiences aligned with education standards that transform classrooms. And so it's a little bit different than what you can pull down off the shelf because we're really focused on that learning aspect in the classroom. And with that learning aspect comes this idea of access to education and access to learning. And we get to exist with this idea of playful learning. So activities that are meaningful, that are iterative, that are socially interactive, that are engaging, and that are joyful. And so it's really fun to see kind of how those characteristics then map onto the UDL work as well.
Yeah, I love when you say joyful because we know the new UDL 3.0 has joy intentionally in there.
It made me very happy to see that.
Which should be part of every experience that we design, right? Why design it if it's not, the end result is not something that's joyful and that brings joy to learning?
Yeah. Well, I actually think the joyful bit is really interesting because joyful can mean so many things. So a lot of times we think like happiness and laughter. And when we're talking about it from a playful learning perspective, we're also talking about like curiosity, that like I lean forward in my chair because I'm really excited. Like I don't know where this is going next. And for us, that is such a joyful experience that it's not necessarily, doubling over with laughter or this is, being happy.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is about happiness, but it's also about that hard fun, that like, oh, I want to figure this out. I'm really excited. I'm really motivated. And so I love the fact that joy was brought to the center of UDL, because it's also so multifaceted.
Yeah, to the previous episode, at the end of the episode, we talked about flow. The
Hmm.
idea that when you're experiencing joy in learning, right, you have this flow state, and Brian pronounced the guy's name correctly. So Brian, I'll let you do the honors, but we
That's right.
encourage everybody to look up that idea of flow.
It's one of my few talents that I have that I can say Mikhail Chick send me off with just
Wow.
relative ease, right? But I will say this: I love this idea, like this reframing, not really a reframing, but a rephrasing maybe of what joy is, because that's a hard sell sometimes, right? Especially when we look at higher ed, and
Hmm.
now the guidelines say, there's joy that's brought into it, but when we think about it as serious or like hard fun, serious play, like those ideas. Start to reframe that joy comes from being like really really into what you're doing, entering that state of flow, that optimal like autotelic experience if you want to get technical, right? And then being exhausted by it, but if you're asked would you do it again, you're like, yeah, I'm totally down to do that again, right? That type of experimentation, that type of investigation is this really great framing of what joy is. It's not just I am so happy that I get to learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so amazing to see that in classrooms. And, we've done so many classroom tests. We've tested, so our new product offering, we've tested with over 3,000 students,
Hmm.
which is an insanely high number. And it is so amazing to me. And I am always, just blown over by the teachers afterwards telling us of, oh, that student over there always turns off when we're doing something, or that student never likes science class, or they, this one has, such a hard time grasping key scientific phenomenon. And I have no idea which student that is, because all of these students are so engaged and focused and engaging in that hard fun, in that flow state. And so it's really great for me to be able to say to teachers like, I don't know which student you're talking about. Like they're all wonderful and amazing and engaged. So
So, Stacia, I'm so engaged and in such a state of flow that I forgot my next question, but I think you already hinted at it.
I
And it's
did.
that idea of, how do we get this hard fun? And you hinted that you have a new product. So, we want to spend a
Mhm.
little bit of time talking about that. It's a new product that you just launched for K8 classrooms in science. Can you tell us a little bit more about the product and how it unlocks what you just mentioned, the hands on, minds on,
Mhm.
playful learning for students?
Absolutely. So I'm really excited and really proud to share about our new product offering. So Lego Education Science is a K to 8 science offering, and so what we do is we actually supplement the core curriculum here. So we have 120 learning opportunities from K to 8 that take key scientific phenomenon and allow students to engage with them hands-on. And so we allow them to explore and to deepen their understanding, to be introduced to new topics as well. And we really want students to feel ownership and agency while they're learning. So within the product, we actually have three different boxes. We have a K to 2, 3 to 5, and 6 to 8 grades. And we do this because we know that students learn differently at different ages. Like, we don't want to give the same bricks to a kindergartner that we do an eighth grader, because that wouldn't be fun for anybody. And so we've got about 40 lessons per box, and teachers can mix and match what they would like to do, so they don't have to do all of the lessons for their grade if they don't want to. But we are standards aligned, so we use the next generation science standards, and then we also use state specific standards. So we use the Texas TEAC standards, for example, so that we make sure that we have robust science learning. We also talk about all of the scientific domains to a certain extent. So we're talking about life science and earth science, physical science, and the engineering and technology. We also touch on things like biology and physics and chemistry. And then the great thing is that students all get a Lego box, and students are going to collaborate in groups of 4. So you're really working on those collaboration and those communication skills. And then the teachers also get all of the resources that they need online. We have a free teacher portal so that teachers are able to just jump right into it. They have facilitation notes, they have classroom presentations, they've got all of the ins and outs of the lesson plans, and it's free to use online, which is super, super exciting. And it's going to be in classrooms starting in August 2025.
I've never wanted to
Oh,
be
Toby.
back as a student in my life until right now.
I will say it is a pretty spectacular thing. And I certainly didn't have science class like that. Like I had some amazing science teachers, but never to this extent.
So I do love this approach, right? And it's kind of like based on that Science 5E kind of approach of
Yep.
of what is the phenomenon, right? And exploring the phenomenon, because that's what connects it, gets back to that engagement principle. That's what connects the learning to what I see in the world, which is in essence what science is, right? It's like trying to explore and explain the things in the world that we don't really understand just yet, right? So I'm digging that and I love that, but I got to ask you, like, what does that begin to look like in the classroom, just beyond just like collaboration, everybody gets a Lego box? Like, what's the nitty gritty of it? What's that start to feel like or look like?
Yeah, totally. And this is a question we get a lot. And this was actually my key role in this product. So I get really, really excited that I get to talk about this. Because I'm so happy you said this. You totally hit the nail on the head. We do use the 5E framework as our instructional model because we know that's how to form good science learning. It's also a template that a lot of teachers know. And it's really just kind of follows the scientific process anyway. And so with LEGO Education Science, our big aim, right, is to deepen student science knowledge and provide agency. And so we incorporate like the UDL principles, but we also have characteristics of playful learning and then our own design principles to ensure high quality, meaningful experiences for teachers and students. That doesn't really answer your question.
I got to say that one more time for the folks in the back about agency and science combining. Like, that is such a beautiful and brilliant line. That this idea of bringing those things together, right? That is the essence, I think, of what UDL kind of represents.
Well, and I think it's something that we're really excited about too, at the fact that students can exist and collaborate at the same time and take just ownership of their learning and be able to access their learning at different points. But to answer your first question, because I'm actually really excited to ask you all, I have a question for you. So in order to talk about our learning experience, I want to ask a big question to you all. How much energy does a snail need?
Ooh, I love this question. How much energy does a snail need?
Well, I'm going to provide a UDL answer. There's variability in the snails. So, depending on where the snail is, depending what it's trying to do in the environment, there may be different energy demands. Is that a good UDL answer?
I like that answer.
Oh.
We're going to go with a little bit of a sillier response, though.
I was going to say it's about 220 joules to 221, whatever it takes. And if you get that reference, then you get that reference.
Oh my goodness. So we actually don't ever give you the answer to this question. So this is an example of a big thought-provoking question that we open our lessons with. And so this is actually a big inquiry question for one of our 4th grade lessons about physical science. This lesson has one of my favorite lesson titles of all time. This lesson is called Disco Snail. And so this lesson is all about helping a snail reach the disco despite its slow movement and lack of energy. And so it encourages students to think creatively about how the snail can gain enough energy to get there. So what happens is the teacher introduces that, and then students are going to get together and they're going to collaborate in groups of 4 to build out of Lego with building instructions, a snail pusher, a snail, and a disco. and they are going to try to use the pusher to get the snail to the disco. When they're talking about that, they're going to also reflect on the impact and make observations. And they'll come back and share with the whole class about what happened to the snail and the pusher. And they're going to use terms like kinetic energy and potential energy, which are not terms you often hear about snails going to a disco. Students are then going to go back to the bricks and they're going to extend their learning by creating something that's going to increase the snail's potential energy. And there's no building instructions for this step. There's no booklet to follow. They have to be creative. They have to work together. They have to negotiate and figure out what they're going to build and how they're going to build it. And then they're going to be able to present their creations to the class and explain that energy conversion. So this is a really cool and really meaningful way of talking about something that's like super abstract and really difficult to teach sometimes. Teachers are then going to wrap it up with a real world connection. And the real world connection here is actually all about sledding down a hill and where your potential energy and where your kinetic energy is and what that conversion is. And then all of our lessons have an optional evaluate section that students can either draw or write or answer in however the teacher wants them to. We're super excited if they do a turn and talk strategy, if they write in their science and engineering notebooks, if they create a vlog. Like, we're just excited the fact that they're engaging in a reflective prompt. And then this flow, what you saw with the teacher introduce and students build and kind of back and forth of who's driving the learning experience, is the exact same for all 120 of our lessons, which is also really great for students to be able to know what to expect when they're doing a Lego education lesson.
By the way, Disco Snail, great band name. So
Right?
Brian, if we ever put together a band, Disco Snail is it. We're going with Disco
Yeah,
Snail.
and that sounds great. I'd also like to change my name officially to Johnny Butane, so I can join the Disco Snails. I just wanted to say I love the passion that comes through when even in talking through this lesson. And I have to tell you, I am totally bought in now. Like, I can understand why you have such passion, and that 5E model, how it aligns so closely to UDL. And then on top of that, how we take something that is almost has this air of like this feel of whimsical fun to it, but then translates into really learning the science principle that, which you said is very abstract. Like, that is again the epitome of this serious play, this this hard fun, this joy that you're talking about. I feel it coming through, and you just drew just a really great line through it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that we're really excited about. We also have to straddle that line too between, kind of quirky, funny, silly stories, but also that more, serious science. And one of the things that we really took into consideration is how old our students are. So this is a 4th grade lesson, and this is that 4th grade humor. Like, a disco snail is funny in 4th grade. A disco snail might not be as funny in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we really needed to be mindful of what types of stories we were telling and what the models looked like. Like, I could probably go on for hours about how we made sure that we were hitting humor in the right way, we were hitting interest in the right way, because we wanted to make sure that we were talking at eye level to students. Like, the biggest way to turn off a middle school student is to talk down to them and give them something cutesy. And so it was a lot. We spent a lot of time and effort of what is middle school funny? What is middle school humor? And being able to kind of straddle those two worlds.
Yeah, I love that because age appropriate content is a big part of engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Stacia, let me ask. We had a conversation before this podcast, and we were talking about different learning spaces, and you shared what the spaces within your work environment's like and how it's been designed. And we're just curious. So, how did you and your team first learn about universal design for learning, and what initially drew you to that framework? It seems just so effortless and natural. So, we would really like to hear about that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually heard about it from one of our U.S. colleagues. They had sent us, very early on in our our creation process and our prototyping process, we got a message of like, hey, have you mapped the new experience to the UDL framework? And UDL had been on Lego Education's radar as a whole for a couple of years. I had gone to a couple of webinars, and it was just kind of something that existed on the periphery, but we'd never really sat down and mapped on our learning experience. And so we took it was the 2.2 guidelines. And so, in our early prototyping phases, really sat down and color coded it. Like we sat down with highlighters and we went through each of the areas to see where it mapped out. And it was really eye opening for us because it illuminated to us so many gaps that we had. And so the cool thing about working for Lego Education is that we don't just like create something and then it goes to market and then that's it. It's a long prototype process. It's a long production process. Because we have the privilege of going into classrooms, we want to make sure that we're doing justice to our students. We're doing good learning experience, good learning design. And so we have that luxury of being able to go slow and to map and to really be mindful of it. And so once we had done that initial mapping, it actually became part of our design criteria, and it became part of whether or not a lesson would continue to mature. So every time we have a lesson concept, we have a group of stakeholders who, we talk about it, we talk about the learning, we talk about how students access that learning, and the UDL principles really became a key part of that. And so it just became this organic design language for us, which was really, really exciting, because then when the 3.0 guidelines came out, I am so excited to say, I think they came out like July 30th, and I think by August 4th we were fully mapped, because we had done so much work ahead of time and kind of keeping it in touch of what was going on. But it was such an exciting thing for us of being able to map to the new guidelines so quickly, and also, like you said, everything clicked into place. And with the update of the guidelines, you actually gave us more space to align with the inclusion of play as well. And the other thing to note is that, we see the importance of meeting all needs of students. And so we also localize into 21 different languages. We're a global product, and not all students are going to learn the same. They're not all going to access the information the same way. And so for us, the UDL guidelines really honors that commitment of creating learning experiences for all students.
Wow, you've really taken that idea of designing for all really seriously. And that's evident in your efforts to, localize. That's a really important component of accessibility that we don't often consider. So you've provided us some good examples of how UDL shows up in the design of the lessons that you're sharing. But we know that UDL is about process as well. So we want to spend a little bit of time of how like this whole UDL design process has influenced your team and how they work. So can you give us some examples of some guidelines or some considerations that were specifically meaningful to your team that you've kind of taken on and really run with?
Absolutely. I think I actually went back to the team and asked them this question and had, what are the things that I should highlight? Because again, the team that creates this is massive. I'm one cog in a giant machine. And it was funny because everybody had a different, like, oh, you have to share this bit, you have to share this story. And it's amazing because so many people have such pride in different parts of our work and see individual components as the piece that lives up to UDL and to accessibility. And so, there's a lot of like really interesting things that we did. So for, looking at like language and symbols, for example, in our student-facing content in our classroom presentation. So it's essentially like a presentation a teacher can put up on their whiteboard, their projector. And we really wanted to make sure that we used a clear font for students to be able to read. And down to the point that like our lowercase a was the one that students write and they learn to read with, as opposed to that like typewriter A, that double story A. And it's such a small thing, but it makes such a huge difference. Now, students aren't left alone with the content. It's not something that they read on their own, but having the ability to hear that and be able to see it and be able to interact with it in those two ways is so meaningful and so powerful, especially for students who are developing their language. The other thing is that, the age appropriate vocabulary was key for us. We didn't want to give contextual vocabulary to students who didn't really need it. So you see a lot of our context vocabulary in our younger grades, and you see more scientific domain vocabulary only in our older grades. So we kind of make sure that we're scaffolded and scaled there. We also made really specific language choices for readability. And so, again, making sure that they can engage with that content. The other one that really, really struck a chord with us was this idea of the action and expression. And so we know that students are going to interact with prompts in different ways. So the prompt for students to go build is both on the screen and teachers are saying it out loud. We also know that that sort of experience with creativity can be really different. So we have opportunities for students to express themselves verbally, so answering questions, engaging that way. We also have opportunities for students to build creatively and really, get their hands on bricks and express themselves that way. And we want to make sure that it's not just one type of learner that takes the forefront here. We took a lot of consideration into this idea of like cognitive stimulation. So like where's student stress, where's student anxiety? And for us, a lot of it was in the action and expression. Like how can we use these guidelines to really make sure that we're not stressing students out, or if we're stressing them out, it's that like good stress, which is always a hard phrase to say. We want to make sure that the students who love to collaborate get that opportunity, but also the students that collaboration gets really hard for them, they also get that opportunity to relax into the learning experience. And so being able to have that kind of variability for us was really, really important. And we also just want to make sure that no matter what, students feel success at the end of the lesson. And so success can look like a lot of different things depending on what that student does or how that student engages.
Yeah, and creating that opportunity for success for all students, makes me want to weep because it's so important. And I love how you just explained that so beautifully. And again, I want to be a student. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I have to tell you, like, you are hitting all the right notes right now. Like, I'm joining your fan club, because you're saying things like, what you're really saying is let's get rid of the extrinsic cognitive load and put it really on that germane cognitive load of really learning. And this phrase of relaxing into the learning, right? That is such a great term to use, right? And the idea or the concept of framing that there is hard stress that pushes us forward, right? And that it's not bad to have hard stress, or have good stress in a learning experience. That's what drives us to want to figure it out and to struggle through something and to build the often overused term of grit, right? But like that's what truly builds that. So I love that, and I think that I'm going to ask you this question, but I think I already kind of know the answer. But I'd love you to dive a little bit deeper into it. Like, what is the aspect of UDL that most resonates with this playful learning and like the work you do at Lego Education? You did a great job with your action and expression and talking about that. But I think that I'd just like to hear what you had to say about some of the other ones. Where's your favorite lie?
I mean, for me, the favorite one was the fact that you guys highlighted nurture, joy, and play in the 3.0 guidelines. Like that was just like, the heaven started singing moment for us. Like that was so exciting to see another organization recognize what play is. There is such amazing value in free play for students, and we know that. And it's amazing to have students, play on their own or play with others. And there's all this amazing research out there when it comes to play types, whether it's solo play, parallel play, interactive play. And then there's this other kind of bucket of guided play and playful learning. And these are all they all touch each other. And so for us, seeing you all talk about nurturing joy and play was such a nod to that idea of there are multiple types of play, and that, playful learning does have a space within accessibility and inclusion for students. For us, it's also emphasizing the value of playful learning and providing opportunities for exploration and experimentation and discovery in a guided way. So again, being able to see that highlighted was really, really exciting for us. I also was really excited in the fact that with that came a heavier endorsement into your engagement category. And engagement has been something that we within LEGO Education have been talking about a ton. So we actually just did a global study on engagement. And so we found that only a third of students today are engaged in their learning. And yet more than 80% of US administrators believe that engaging students with a learning through play approach supports students' higher test scores. And so it's so amazing to see another organization highlighting the need for strong engagement and the need for play for students.
And I think through play, it's not just, the content that you're learning, but you're also learning about your own sort of persistence, right? Your ability to persist and your ability to sort of, face these challenges in learning, because we do believe that learning should be challenging. It should be challenging in the right ways, right? I think we've called that productive struggle in the past, right? So the idea that it's supposed to be rigorous. It's supposed to challenge you to reach for something that you haven't been able to do before. But how do we scaffold that? And it sounds like you're building that into your lessons. And a lot of it reminds me, Brian, of your concept of, bounded autonomy. You provide these scaffolds, but you also provide a lot of space for learners to explore and to discover. So this is really valuable to hear that.
Yeah, I was drawing the same connection. Yeah, for sure.
I think there's something really, really exciting about this idea of students engaging in a hard topic and engaging something that can be really difficult, and then also giving them the space to digest it and to be able to have that moment, to have that breath, and to be able to process it on their own terms. And I think being able to have access to all of those different types of learning opportunities is really where you see like good holistic learning coming into play. You don't want just one type of learning, or the same way that you don't want just one type of teacher, or you don't want to eat just one type of food for the rest of your life. Like having that balance is so key for unlocking those aha moments in the classroom.
And I was just going to add that this idea of having all of these different levels of interaction allows for students to also, or for learners in general, to also disengage from the task. Because this concept of constant engagement is exhausting for everybody. Nobody's constantly engaged. But this allows for so many re-entry points or re-engagement tactics to kind of pop up and for students or learners to find them on their own. I love this concept of these cycles of engagement happening as a student needs them. Right, where they engage, they disengage, they re-engage, and that really what you are building with this program and with LEGO Education in general is you're building just the environment for that to happen, right? And then you're scaffolding it, but then you're allowing students to find it on their own. It's just a really brilliant way to go.
I think one of the coolest things that if you ever come out to see a LEGO Education lesson, one of the coolest things, and this happens in almost every classroom I've ever been in, whether it's with little kids or big kids, as soon as the bricks come out, there's a spike in volume in the room. Everybody gets super loud. Kids are up. They're physically digging in, and there's that high noise spike. But as students start to build and they start to figure out what their role is, and we have minifigures that actually tell them which role they have or which box they have to build. And it's amazing because the volume drops and you see students process what they're doing, and it's not a disengagement, it's engagement in a different way. They're internalizing what they're doing. They're figuring out where they sit within the learning experience, and they're able to be a little bit quieter. And then again, that volume peaks again, right when everybody's basically done with the model, and now they're playing with it, and they're using our motors or our color sensor to make it go or to make it move. And so having that moment of calm and that moment of quiet is actually really beautiful because you can see kind of what engagement looks like in different ways.
Yeah, and I just have to do a shout out to any classroom teachers currently using Lego Education and would love to be able to go observe. So please invite me into. So, Stacia, clearly Lego and yourself are fully immersed in UDL, which is
Mhm.
so incredible. So, we just want to ask, what are you looking forward to of the future of UDL in your work?
Oh, I that is such a great question. I think for me, I'm so excited to bring all of these insights and all of the work that we've done and all of the work that you guys have done with the UDL guidelines and bring it beyond the bricks. Like we're fully immersed with it with the bricks, but we're excited to go even further beyond that. So it's having conversations with you all. This summer we're going to be releasing a white paper that talks more about this idea of inclusion and accessibility and Lego education science. We're also working with academic experts to come up with some recommendation and advice for teachers to create more playful, inclusive classrooms and playful, inclusive science classrooms. But really, we're just excited to see the UDL guidelines come to life with Lego Education Science in August. That is the most exciting thing right now.
Yes, and I feel like we have to end with that quote, UDL beyond the bricks at Lego Education. It's pretty
I
I
got.
cool.
love it. I love it. I think that's a great tagline.
I've got to ask you this though: if you were to
Okay.
be a minifig in any Lego set that has ever existed, which one would you do? What Lego set would you be a minifig for?
So this is a very bizarre, or not bizarre question. This is going to be a very unsatisfying answer for you. So the other product that Lego Education offers is called Spike Prime and Spike Essential. Spike Essential is our elementary school STEAM solution, and there are 4 minifigures in that set. And then I actually got to help write the personalities for those minifigures. And so part
That's
of
dope.
me is in each of those minifigures. And then here's a fun fact. I have an 8-year-old son who was 2 and 3 at the time that I wrote was writing this product. And one of the minifigures, Leo, is actually based off of my son's personality. And
Oh,
so he
wow.
has a
Get out of
minifigure
here!
mocked up after him.
How could that be disappointing? How could that be a disappointing answer? You're already part of it. Like that's dope. I can't. I like that's an achievement I would love to have. That like I was able to base one of the minifigs off my son or my daughter, and I got to write them. Come
Mhm.
on, that's a dope answer. There you go.
It's a
Now we need to go find Leo. So go
Yeah.
online and find Leo
Exactly.
in that kit and
Yeah.
learn
No,
more
and
about it.
he's got such a cool story, and my son is so excited. We got to do a Spike Essential lesson in his class a couple weeks ago, and he's so excited and so proud to show Leo off to all of his friends. But yeah, it's one of the biggest privileges I have had as a professional is to be able to work on that content and to be able to write those stories and those biographies. So yeah.
Well, you're so cool. And I'm a little jealous, but that is amazing, the opportunities that you've been able to do. And as we just come up to the end, Stacia, we just want to thank you so much for being with us and taking the time here. The story behind Lego Education and your own journey has been amazing. And I have no doubt that our listeners are going to be so engaged and super excited to dive into that new product.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share everything that we're up to.
Thanks, Stacia. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much. Great talk.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Learning Experience Podcast. We are so glad you're a part of this conversation.
And if you're like me and today's episode sparked some ideas or got your brain flowing, well, just remember there's so much more to explore out there.
And remember that CAST is leading the way when it comes to accessibility, workforce innovation, professional development, and research.
So visit cast.org to dive deeper. That's cast.org and keep learning with us.